The 2024-25 Premier League campaign is on the horizon. In preparation, we're previewing every single team and discussing how they'll shape up over the next campaign. We take a look at the transfer business conducted by the teams so far and offer suggestions of who else they should move for before the season gets started. Now we're on to Manchester United. After their FA Cup win last season, United have foundations to build on. We look at how they've improved their squad and what additions they need to close the gap to Man City and Arsenal. This is our 2024-25 season preview for Manchester United. Alright, let's talk about Manchester United then. After last season, I think there's some real positive foundations for United to build on. Obviously, 8th in the Premier League, they'd have wanted more than that, but it was all round, with the FA Cup win, a decent season, I think, in the end.
Yeah, very much so. I think, as you say, it was a tough campaign for United at times. They had some decent moments, they had some terrible moments, but overall, it was a really good ending. Beating Manchester City in the FA Cup final was very good, not only because it's a trophy, it's the FA Cup, but also it still meant that they retain European football for another year, and to be in the Europa League, that's not too bad. They'll want to improve the league position, but overall it was a good ending and it was a good platform to build from going into this season and to use that momentum to push on and try and have a better campaign this year.
Yeah, the results at the end of the season were there for Manchester United. I think the big issue that has to be addressed, though, is the football, for large parts, wasn't. And I think what we noticed a lot last season in the data as well is that the expected performance has them a lot lower in the table, and that oftentimes Ten Hag is relying on individual quality. Now, at a club like Manchester United, it's not the worst thing, but it does show they're not being incredibly well coached. But however, that FA Cup final where they beat Manchester City showed Ten Hag's quality. And if he can have coaching performances like that more regularly, then I think they'll be well set. I think the issue for Ten Hag has never been taking on the big sides. Yes, of course, they got battered by Liverpool, didn't they? But they've been battered by Liverpool by every manager in the last 5 years. So that's not so much of an issue. But I think when you look at how they play against the smaller sides, they really struggle to break down low blocks. And I think that's something they should have looked to address in the market this summer. And so far, they haven't.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I think the biggest thing for Ten Hag is that he has now been given time, and as we've seen so many managers do, he is starting to get to grips with the Premier League. We know he's a decent manager. We know he has the foundations to be a good coach. We saw that in the Eredivisie, but it does feel like he is now it's been 2 years now. It does feel like he's starting to get to grips with the Premier League, starting to adapt. There's less whining about injuries and so on and so forth, or whatever's going on. He seems to be getting there, and that's big for United, because when your manager knows how to coach in the Premier League, they can play very, very well.
Yeah, indeed. Shall we have a look at the incomings and outgoings? Now, the first thing I want to say with this is I think there's a lot of United fans going on about how this is a fantastic window and that the club are finally there. And while I think the recruitment is okay and all right, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but I don't think there's been enough there yet. And I think United fans are just feeling so starved because transfers over the last few years haven't happened that there is a bit of an overreaction to this window. And let's start with outgoings then, because it's been a decent summer in terms of getting a few transfers done. Amari Forson's left for a free to go to Monza, who's a player who's never realistically going to break into the first team. Hopefully has a good career over at Monza. Donny van der Beek, this is a huge loss. They signed him for £35 million and they're selling him to Girona for £400,000.
Wow. I mean,
that's shocking business.
I think the main thing that he's off the books. He's finally gone.
That is true.
I'm not saying he should not. He could have been a good player, but I think it's important just to cut your losses. He didn't admit that it was a failed transfer and just let Van der Beek go.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but it was really poor business.
Oh, it's a massive
£35 million, and they've ended up in this situation. Then Willy Cambuala to Villarreal for $10 million. I know there'll be a lot of people who don't particularly like this transfer because he actually came in and did a really solid job for them at the end of last season. And I think if United fans, they're still stuck with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire. And if you were going to say out of those three, who'd you sell? It's not Willy Cambuala. No. However, when you consider pure profit and the rules around that, and the fact you can get £10 million for him, and that is all going to go back into the budget and help with that FFP, I think that definitely helps. And the fact that Cambuala came in and did a good job, but realistically, is he going to be top 4 quality even as a rotation option? Probably not. So I don't think that's a huge loss for United. I think as long as they go and sign another right centre half, especially now with Yora's injury, we're going to talk about in a moment. And of course, Maguire and Evans not being very good.
Well, that's my problem.
And injured, apparently.
I get why they've sold him, but you've got one centre-half's injured, one centre-half's just come back from injury towards the end of last season. You've let Varane go. So at the moment, your only fit centre-halves are Martinez, Maguire and Evans.
Lindelof, for now.
Yeah, Lindelof. Okay. Maybe you definitely shouldn't have sold Kambala then. But yeah, as you say, it's good profit, but it's disappointing for the lad, because I think he did really well.
Yeah, fair enough. Alvaro Fernandez going to Benfica for 5 million. He is going to be sold on for 60 million. But was he ever going to get a shot at United? Probably not. Even with one left back at the club this season who's been injured all year, they've not played him. So realistically, he's not going to get any minutes there, is he? But yeah, so that's interesting. Mason Greenwood, we're not going to give him any time of day. 25 million. That's something for United to spend.
It's good for him to go.
Exactly. And Paul from Marseille to buy him. Then Rafael Varane at Como for free. A bit of a servant, Varane, for the last few years. Came in, did a shift. Not going to be a huge loss, I don't think.
Yeah, he didn't. I mean, United fans might disagree with, but from what we watched of Varane, he didn't have a great season last season. I know there was injuries as well across his time at United. He did okay. He had some good games, but it just didn't work out at times. Whether he was injured or had a poor performance, it was an okay transfer. He'll do good for him at Como. He's going to go have great fun over there. But yeah, not a huge miss for United.
No, I think he definitely lost a yard last season. He was in and out of the injury room, and so yeah, I don't think it's a huge loss, as you say, and it does clear a huge amount of wage off of that bill. And let's talk incomings then, because I thought there was so many more than have happened. But obviously a lot of it is just rumour. A lot of deals that looked incredibly close have fallen apart. And so far, only 2 signings. The first of which, Joshua Zirkzee from Bologna. Now, at £35 million, to sign a player who had a really good season in the Serie A last season looks a really good prospect on paper. However, I do have some reservations about this. The fact that last season was his first, I believe, in double digits. And he was playing in a Bologna side who overperformed massively in a Motta system that the league, other teams in the league just couldn't handle. I've got a lot of reservations about this. I think he could be a very good player. But I think Ten Hag has got to stop recruiting people that are Dutch or have played in the Netherlands. Yeah. It just seems to be the only signings he makes.
I think he's a decent player, Zirkzee, and he could be a good player, and he could come into the Premier League, adjust really quickly. But if we know Man United, that is not what we've seen from most signings, as you say. It keeps being these Eredivisie or Dutch players that are unproven. They've had one or two good seasons, and then they come to the Premier League and everyone's surprised when they're not very good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like United, I think he's a good player, but it's not what I'd refer to as a proven or a safe signing, which is weird because that, for me, United shouldn't be the ones that are taking gambles on one-season wonders.
No, but it depends on the price. I think at 35 million, it's a huge fee to pay for someone that you don't have reassurances will be good. I do think there's a lot of potential with Joshua Zirkzee, and I think tactically he's going to fit exactly what United want to do. You look at the FA Cup final, and the reason they could play as they did is because Bruno led the line. And Bruno's a brilliant presser, and Bruno's really good at playing that false 9 type role, because obviously he's not a striker. Now, Zirkzee can operate in a very similar fashion. He'll be able to bring other players into the game, like Bruno, like Garnacho, like Rashford. So I think in that regard, it works quite nicely, and actually I think we might see better performances from Marcus Rashford with a striker who is going to accommodate for him rather than an out-and-out number 9. My other issue is I think you would have wanted to ease him in gently, but with Højlund picking up a 6-week injury, and it's likely he will miss the first few games of the season, if not the first month, Zirkzee's going to have to play those matches. And that's a huge step. He's got to be thrown into the action immediately. I think it's a big gamble that they've got to rely on him performing. It
goes one or two ways. Either he doesn't perform, and I feel for him, because if he has a tough 3 or 4 games, either the majority or a loud minority of United fans will jump on his back, get on him, and then his United career will be starting very poorly, and it will be tough to get it back after that. But if he comes in and he shines, then it'll be incredible. But as you say, it is very difficult for a player who has had one decent season to come straight into the Premier League, have to start his first 2 or 3 games on the bounce and perform. I don't know. I'll be intrigued to see how this one works out.
But it's also catch-22 in that if, obviously, with Højlund's injury, they're sort of forced to play they're forced to play someone else there.
Yeah.
And if they put Bruno there or they put Rashford there, then suddenly the question mark is, well, why isn't Zirkzee starting? So whatever you do, your hand is forced in a sense if you're Erik ten Hag, because Zirkzee now has to play those opening games, and I think he would have rather eased him in gently.
Yeah.
and embedded him in the side over time rather than have to throw him in. And it's going to be trial by fire that first month of the season for Xerxes. So that's an interesting one. And obviously, once Højlund comes back, there's no reassurances of game time and stuff. So it's an odd one. Then Lenny Yoro for 52 million. I love Lenny Yoro. I think there's so much about his skill set that looks incredible. And I think he will be a world-class defender. But there aren't any guarantees of that. That's very much my opinion.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a lot of people who agree and think he will be world-class. His height is incredible. The fact he can play with the ball at his feet, he's a very strong tackler. He's good in the air. He's got so much about him that points towards him being world-class. But he is only 18. And he has only got one senior season of football under his belt. Now, of course, he could be world-class. I think he will be. But there are no reassurances, and £52 million is a lot of money to pay, and it's a lot of money when you're relying him to come in and immediately start. Now, of course, again, 3-month injuries picked up instantly, which seems to be Man United's luck at the moment. But I think it was a lot anyway to rely on him to come in and start.
I agree. I think Yoro could be a very, very good centre-half. He could be one of the best centre-halves in the world over the next few years if he develops to the potential that we know he has. And yes, I think he's got the characteristics to survive in the Premier League. But the basics still stand. United have thrown 52 million at a player who has had one good season. He's then gone and got injured. It just feels like the transfers can't be right. And I'm not saying that Yoro's a bad signing. I think he could come in and do very well. But as you say, you're bringing in an 18-year-old to come in and start immediately, who's never played in the Premier League before. He's got a 3-month injury anyway, and it's 52 million. I have some questions similar to the Xerxes deal. Of there is a big risk there's a chance that this is a risk that won't pay off. And if we know United's luck over the last season where they've spent big. Or that look at like Anthony and so on. The track record isn't very strong, and that's my problem. I think.
Yeah, definitely so. Let's head on over to the squad screen then, so we can sort of evaluate the squad, look at where they might need to add some players in the final few weeks of the window. Because obviously they've been linked with a lot of players that just hasn't come through. So we'll look at the screen now. In goal, they've got Onana and Bayindir. I think that's an okay rotation. Yeah. Andre Onana proved himself last season to be a very capable goalkeeper. Of course, he had some absolute howlers. And we've spoken about that in the past, but I think in possession there aren't many goalkeepers better than him. His distribution is absolutely phenomenal, and yeah, I think he could be a really key part of how United play. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think he's a really good goalkeeper. Looking at the back four, then at left back you've got just Luke Shaw. I put Tyrone Malacia there, but since about January he's fallen off the face of the earth. I have no idea where that man has gone.
He got injured, didn't he?
He was injured. Then there was a rumour he was sent to rehab for using laughing gas. I don't know if that was ever proven to be true. No. I've not seen him at all in pre-season yet. United fans may be able to correct that if they've seen him, but I've not seen anything suggesting he's still alive. So we should probably check on that if you're United. But yeah, Shaw, one of the best left backs in the league.
Yeah,
when he's fit. The issue is he's not fit very often at the moment, and that is a big concern. I think they should look to sign another left back.
Yeah,
there was conversations earlier this window about Ben Chilwell. I think that'd be a really nice option at left back because they do have a very similar skill set. Him and Shaw. So I think that'd be a good pickup. And Chelsea are looking to sell. So I mean, you can probably get him at a fairly cheap price. Yeah, 20 million, 25 million. So that could be a nice pickup. Centre-half options then. At left centre-half, you've got Martinez. You've also got Victor Lindelof. I have huge doubts about Lindelof's ability anymore. He's had a tough few seasons down Man United. He's put a shift in at times, but I think they'll be looking to move him on soon. And at right centre-half, they've got Lenny Yoro, Maguire and Evans. And again, Yoro's been injured. The other thing to add on pre-season is that Lindelof, Maguire and Evans all look to be struggling with knocks and other concerns during their pre-season friendlies. So that is something to be very wary of for United.
Every centre-half's injured and Martinez has just come back. So
yeah, so they definitely need a left centre-half. Right centre-half, I think they're going to go and get De Ligt. They're at the moment discussing terms on a De Ligt-Mazraoui double deal from Bayern, which again, Ten Hag loves the Eredivisie. They both played for him, I believe, at Ajax, and it's just, I don't know. I just don't know why he's so obsessed with the Eredivisie.
No, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
So many players have come across and not proven themselves to be very good. So, yeah, I've got some huge doubts there. At right back, then, they've got Dalot Wan-Bissaka at the moment. I expect Wan-Bissaka, I mean, it hasn't been announced yet, so I've still included him on the squad screen, but I think he will be moving to West Ham very shortly. Yes. That's around £20 million. That's a good fee. I think it's a bit of a shame he's never worked out at United. I think he's probably a better defensive fullback than Mazraoui. And I think the Mazraoui deal was very interesting to me because with Dalot and Wan-Bissaka, you've got two fullbacks who give you very different options there. You can play a very defensive fullback in Wan-Bissaka who's got okay attacking abilities, or you've got Dalot who's very attacking and can sort of defend. And then with Mazraoui, though, is very similar to Dalot. So I don't really understand that one. But I guess Ten Hag's going very much on the sense both his fullbacks are going to push forward next season. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I think Wan-Bissaka's a good fullback. £20 million is a bit of a shame considering they bought him for 50, but they were never going to get a return on that investment, realistically. So yeah, I think he'll be really good at West Ham. I think that's a really good coup, and they're having a fantastic window. So yeah, big shame for United, but good for Wan-Bissaka, good for West Ham.
Yeah, definitely.
And they should get Mazraoui, so they shouldn't feel that loss too much. Into midfield then. Now they've only got Casemiro as their deepest line
Massive
midfielder.
warning flag.
Yeah, there's a reason there's an exclamation mark over his name there. Because yes, people will say, Kobe Mainoo can play defensive midfield. I don't think he can.
He's not a defensive midfielder.
He's not a defensive midfielder. And what I mean by that is he's not the deepest line player. He's not very good in build up. Kobe Mainoo. He's got so many strengths, and we're going to touch on those in a moment, obviously. But he's not very good in build up, and he's much better when he can push forward into taking areas and carry that ball forward. He's not best as the deep line player.
It's more that if you play him as the deepest player, you're wasting what he actually can do. You're not utilising his incredible strengths that we've seen him do. For England and co. So don't play him there, but also don't play Casemiro there because that man has not got the legs anymore, and he will leave you very exposed.
They definitely need to find a defensive midfielder. I think the Ugarte deal looked like a really good one.
Yeah.
That's now off. I think they were discussing a loan, and then PSG have demanded 50 million, and they've said no, we're not doing that. So yeah, a weird one. PSG, I have no idea what they're doing ever. So I think United have called interest in Ugarte. In the other midfield spot, then Kobe Mainoo, I think, is a really exciting young player. Good. I am worried they're going to overuse him this season because they don't really have another midfield option to play that box-to-box type role. I put Eriksen there. Eriksen is not running from one box to the other.
No.
In the 90 minutes. So that is something to be concerned about. He's more of a playmaker type role, and for certain games, that's going to suit them better than Mainoo to have two creators in there. Because you imagine Fernandes will start the majority of the games in attacking midfield. That's going to be all right. The other thing is that Mount can play a little bit deeper, can play that Mainoo role, because he's decently physically fit. We saw him play that role a little bit at the end of last season, and that was quite encouraging. So I think there definitely are options there. In attacking midfield, then we've already mentioned Mount and Bruno. Bruno is their key player, so there's no fears there. McTominay as well, attacking midfielder. He's expected to leave though. Fulham have apparently bid 35 million. United have been umming and ahhing on it. For me, accept that and go, well, thank you very much, Fulham. No idea why they've bidded that much money, but
I like McTominay. I think he's a decent player, but 35 million is a very good price.
Yeah, I think he's good in attacking areas. I think people are starting to realise he's a striker. We saw that for
Steve
Scotland.
Clark.
Exactly. But his in-possession stuff just isn't good enough. I don't think he offers much in defensive areas, so he can't really play deeper.
Yeah.
In attacking midfield, is he better than Bruno? Is he better than Mount? Probably not. I think you can get a decent price there if you flog him to Fulham. On the left wing, they only really have Marcus Rashford. They're such lopsided with these wingers. And obviously, Garnacho could play over there, Sancho could play over there, Diallo, players like that. But you want players that are naturally left wingers, and you've only got Marcus Rashford on that left flank. On the right flank, you've got Garnacho, Antony, Sancho, Diallo, and Pellistri. They've got to decide what they're doing with these wingers, because I think there's a lot of potential with Diallo and Pellistri, but are they going to get any minutes this season?
Yeah, so it is a tough question. Will they get minutes? Obviously, there's still big question marks around what they're doing with Jadon Sancho.
He's been playing in pre-season, which is an encouraging sign.
That is positive, and if they can get back on back level on good terms and really get the best out of him, he is a very good player.
He's certainly better than Anthony.
He is definitely better than Anthony.
What are they doing with Anthony? Because they've got £100 million.
It's hard. You spent £100 million on a player that can only use one of his feet.
Yeah.
I don't. That's a problem. You can't sell him, but you can't. You have to play him. You can't spend £100 million on a player and then not play him. It's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel sorry for United fans because I couldn't watch Anthony every week. It's going to be a really tough gig to decide who plays on that right hand side.
Yeah, and then Garnacho, for me, one of the best forwards in the league, and one of the best attackers in the league. I think he's not someone I like, but he is a very good performer.
He's a really good player, and the wonder goal at Everton, but yeah, he's a really decent, he's a very dangerous player, really good goal scorer, I think his attitude isn't the greatest at times.
He's a cocky little shit, but
exactly,
he annoys opposition.
That's the thing. He's perfect. When he's on your team, brilliant. If you're up against him, you do not like him.
Yeah,
but
I think it's a similar thing with Bruno.
Exactly, same with
I'm
Bruno.
sure United fans love Bruno. I despise Bruno Fernandes.
Exactly,
but he's a very good footballer. So I think in that regard, they've got some excellent players there. Then just two strikers, Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee. They've got a couple of young players as well in the academy who would be options as well, but no one of huge note. They've loaned out a few as well, to be fair. So yeah, Højlund, Zirkzee are options there. Højlund out injured at the moment. I have some doubts over Zirkzee. Obviously, Fernandes could play higher. Rashford could play through the middle. So they've got options there. That's not a huge concern.
No.
Yeah, I think Zirkzee's a good pickup. We'll see whether he comes good or not.
If not, once Højlund's fit, we know he can fire. He had a decent debut campaign last season. I think he can build on that, and he could be a really, really good forward in the Premier League. I think he could be one of those strikers in the league.
My issue with Højlund is that I'm not sure Ten Hag knows how to use him, because what Ten Hag likes from a striker is someone who can play with his back to goal. Someone who can bring other players into the game, and Højlund isn't that forward. So I think he might prefer Joshua Zirkzee.
Which then could pay off. That's but the problem is, then suddenly when you go, United can't win.
What you do with the £70 million strike you signed last summer?
Oh dear.
Let's talk other transfers then, because we've got a few options here. Now, I've not put down the obvious ones. I can't be bothered to talk about Delitto or Mazraoui because everybody else has. So if you want to go find out about Delitto and Mazraoui, watch everyone else's videos. We could talk about some other options here, because I still think there are some issues they need to address. I think left wing, it's a big issue. Some competition with Rashford, maybe even a starter over Marcus Rashford could be an interesting decision. A left centre-half as well, a left-footed centre-half to come and play as backup to Martinez, especially with his injury concerns of late. And then a defensive midfielder is absolutely pivotal for me, especially after losing out on Ugarte. They've got to go and get someone. I think there would be a lot of options. I think Ugarte was perfect. He's gone now, or would have been a very good option. João Palhinha would have been another really good option. He's gone now. You've got Nicola Ravella, who would have been a very good option. Yeah, but Lazio have reloaned him. So I think by acting late now, you've lost out on a lot of options, but there are still players out there. Let's start with that left centre half then, and I've identified Felix Uduakai, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He plays for Augsburg. He's German. He's about 26 years old, I think, and he's a very solid Bundesliga defender. If you look at his FBref profile, I think what it shows is how Augsburg play more than how Uduakai plays. Now, obviously, he's not the most incredible centre-half in possession, but his progressive carries are quite decent. His progressive passes a little bit low. However, he's playing an Augsburg system that doesn't really accommodate for that, and he would come over to Manchester United as a backup option. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the worst thing if you just want a centre-half who is in the 95th percentile for clearances last season. If you can slap him on, he just clears the ball for the last 5-10 minutes, that's not a bad option to have. He's decently tall, he's physical, I think he'd adapt to the Premier League nicely. And United don't have a huge budget at the moment. They've already spent quite a bit this summer. I think there's other big areas they still need to address. Uduakai, about £10-15 million, would be a really nice backup option.
Yeah, definitely so. He's exactly that, isn't he? He's the player you can bring in to come on and do a shift. And for me, he's better quality than the likes of your Lindelofs and your Evans. And so he comes in, he does a shift, but he's also decent quality. And as you say, he can just deal with whatever you need him to deal with. And that's the main thing is, you're 1-0 up, you're hanging on, you want to win the game, bring him on, heads it, can keep just heading the ball out, get it gone, wins the game.
Yeah, very true. And obviously, the other left centre half they were talking about was Jared Branthwaite. I've seen absolutely no point to that transfer. I have no idea why they've been pushing for him. They've got Lisandro Martinez, and the two of them can't coexist, really. So I don't really see what the point in that was, unless they're going to use Martinez as a left back, which I think is something they might look to do. They've not even looked really at a left back other than Chilwell. And if they were going to sign two very attacking right backs, I wouldn't be surprised if they used Shaw or Martinez as sort of a situational back three type player, and then let the other fullback push on. So that's something I think might be explored this season, and we'll be intrigued to see what comes from that. And let's look at defensive midfield then, and I picked out Daniel Baloka. Now, he is Romanian/Italian, who's born in Italy. He's represented the Romanian national team. He's then said he now wants to represent Italy. Italy haven't called him up. No idea what's going on there, but we don't need to worry about that. He's been playing for Sassuolo this season. He's had one season there, and he's looked really, really solid because his deep ball build-up play is very, very good, and so United coming out of the back and using him to build up would be a nice option. So I think that's really nice. You look at his pass completion, it's up in the 90th percentile, which is really strong, 89.8%. So yeah, that's obviously very good. And having someone who's very safe and secure on the ball as that deepest line midfielder could be very nice. His successful take-ons was something that really intrigued me because he averages 1.25 per 90, and that's in the 88th percentile for his position. So he's clearly a player who likes to dribble that ball forwards, and we see the same sort of thing with Kobe Mainoo. So I think there's definitely shades of Mainoo in Balaka, but I think he's a bit more defensive with his play. His tackles are in the 58th percentile, 2.14. Progressive passes, 51st percentile. He's shown some decent possession stuff, a lot of decent out possession stuff. I think there's a lot of positives with Balaka that perhaps don't show themselves in his FBref profile because it's more about where he does his good work rather than what he does.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think the big thing that he has over Casemiro is the legs are talked about. You know, he can, just sit there and screen in front of your back four. He does keep things out. He can keep up with play. He won't leave you exposed, and that's the main thing. It's just having security in there, and having a player like Balaka, just gives you that extra strength in midfield and just protects you a bit more defensively.
Yeah. Now I'm going ambitious in my final transfer because I think Balaka about 20-25 million, about 10-15 for Felix Aduakai. So I think that would still leave you with quite a bit in the budget to go hell for leather after Kaoru Mitoma.
Wow.
I love Mitoma. I've spoken about him a lot on this channel, and for good reason. He is a very, very good player. I do think last season he was slightly figured out by a lot of defenders in the league, but I also think a little bit of that was the fact that Brighton didn't have their creators.
I mean,
so they weren't picking him out.
Well.
He was injured for a bit of the season as well, as you say, but they didn't have their creators like McAllister and Caicedo, so their in-possession football wasn't very good. And I think De Zerbi's system very much faltered without those key players, and obviously with a lot of injuries in that Brighton squad. So I don't think Mitoma's underperformance is all on Mitoma. If you look at his numbers this is from last season, by the way, progressive carries still 6.39. That's up in the 96th percentile. Yes, his successful take-ons were slightly down, still in the 76th percentile, averaging 2.12 per 90 minutes. And then his touches in the attacking penalty area were 7.2 per 90, up in the 92nd percentile. If you want an attacker who's going to bring directness into your side, Mitoma's the one to do it. And with huge doubts over the future of Marcus Rashford, I think it would do him the world of good to have someone in there who's offering him real competition for starting minutes, because then Rashford has to perform. Rashford has to raise that level. So for me, he'd be a fantastic addition. I can't see the issue here with Mitoma. No. Yes, his goals were down slightly last season, but I think in this United system, he'd work really nicely.
Yeah, no, he's a brilliant player. He's a direct player. He's a smart player, and I mean, he's a player that everyone wants on their team. He's that good, and I think he'd be a massive signing if United could get him over the line, or if they did look at him. Price, it's gonna be steep, but he is that good of a player that he warrants a price that high.
Yeah, and Brighton, obviously, we know how they like to negotiate. It's probably going to be pushing around £80 million. But if you spent 90 million on Anthony, you can spend 80 million on a very much Premier League proven player. So I think it'd be a fantastic signing. Whether or not it's very realistic, I'm not sure. I think it'd be very difficult to pull off.
It's ambitious.
I think it would be exactly what they need.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I'll be intrigued to see what United do. Let's talk then sort of predictions for this season. What United... I think my initial thoughts here are United are probably right now in and around the conversation for 5th, 6th, 7th-ish. And people will go, what about 3rd and 4th? I think with the last 2 weeks of this window will go to determine whether or not they're going to finish in the Champions League spots or not. Because they could go out, they could add the 3 players I've listed, they suddenly look like a really strong, complete squad.
Yeah.
And obviously with Xerxes and Yoro, if those two perform, I think they'd be 3rd. I think it's a real opportunity to finish 3rd this season. I don't know whether Liverpool are going to be right up there. I think there's, with Slot, there's going to be a natural decline. I'm not sure about what Chelsea are doing right now or what Tottenham are doing right now.
That's the thing.
I think Villa looks strong. I think Newcastle looks strong. But with the quality and resource United have, they should be able to get 3rd this season. So I think a lot of it comes down to what they do in the final weeks of the season. If they go into the season and Casemiro is their only defensive midfielder, then I see huge issues in that, and I think they have the same problems in build-up they have all year. And I think that if they have to rely on individual quality again, and those individuals fail them, this could be a really poor season for United. So it's very much on a knife edge right now as to whether they finish in the top 3 and are challenging for the title, or whether they finish in 10th.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an issue. They just need a little bit of security, a little bit of reliability, and I'm not sure that they're ever going to have that with Ten Hag because they haven't in 3 years.
I think
I'm not sure.
the big thing for me is that they get it right. If United get it right, they're on the money, because as you spoke about, there's so much change and unknown around the big sides. Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, Brighton. We don't know how those teams are going to fare. We don't know how good they're going to be. So United, they've been pretty stable. It's the same manager. It's mostly the same 11. If they can get it right, or at least be consistent, United could be bang on it this season because of those other teams, being unknowns. We don't know how, as you said, Liverpool are going to drop off. Chelsea is very interesting. We don't know what's going to happen. These teams could massively underperform. United may need to make sure that they are there to sweep up the places that become available. If they do that, as you say, they could find themselves in the top 4, winning trophies, having a brilliant season. If they don't do that, they could struggle like they did last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's going to be very interesting to see where they finish this season. They've also got Europa League to contend with as well. I think that's a competition they should be realistically targeting to win. But then we thought Liverpool would do it last year and they didn't. So it does prove to be quite a difficult one if you're not focused on winning that competition. If you've got your eyes on other prizes, it's very easy to be caught out by Atalanta and Gianpiero Gasperini. So I think United could perform. I mean, they were there the 2 seasons ago now, and they lost to... Who did they lose to? Sevilla. They got absolutely tanked by Sevilla. Yeah. So, they've got to be mindful of that. I think it's a competition they should be targeting to win, especially this season with no teams getting knocked down from the Champions League. You know who your competition are now from the outset. It's a competition United should be right up there in. Will they be? You never know.
No.
They might lose to Ludogorets and loads of other teams and end up, in the playoffs, and then it becomes very messy. But it's a competition they should realistically be targeting to win. Whether or not they do it, it's up to them.
Yeah, exactly that.
Will be very interesting to see what happens this season then with United. I think there's a lot of things to be positive about. I think there's a lot of things to be slightly worried about. Should be interesting, though. But that's everything from us today. If you're enjoying this preview, there's going to be one on screen now. I believe it was Manchester City, of course, from yesterday. So if you want to go see how your arch rivals are going to do this season, hint, they're going to win the league, go and check out that video. But that's everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.